You're listening to Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat. It's revealed. And this is a show where we really try to figure out what it takes to make a startup successful. What is it that these entrepreneurs do over and over again to be successful? And today we're actually talking about one of the more interesting topics is things we cannot control. Our startups collateral damage when it comes to tariffs, this tariff turmoil. Look what's happened to startups in the last few years, Michelle. We went from the pandemic, where a number of startups went under. Then we had high inflation, our rising costs. We had high interest rates. And now we're being hit with tariff after tariff. And it's going to affect every single small business in America. And I find it fascinating that big corporations often get an exemption from these type of things, companies like Apple, where the startup were left there struggling. The fact is, we're collateral damage. Billionaires and big corporations control this world, and small businesses, if we can bankrupt them enough of them, then you'll kill the inflation rate. Is that how we're going to solve inflation? The CHIPS Act, how many trillions of dollars went into big corporations? How many went into startups? How many went into small businesses? There haven't been a lot. So we as entrepreneurs have to find a way to survive throughout this. And if you're in the audience, please feel free to come on stage. Raise your hand. It's Friday afternoon, open mic, and today we're talking about tariff turmoil and all the chaos that entrepreneurs have to go through in their career to survive. And actually, there's some really cool strategies, and we've been developing stuff. And by the way, this show isn't Michelle. This show is not just the average show because we're living it. We're not just commentators. We're not just podcasters.
No,
We're actually
not
living
at
it.
all. Not at all. I'll say we're in the Red Sea. We're down there in the Red Sea. If anybody gets the
The
Game
Red
of
Sea.
Thrones. Oh, no, that was the Red Wedding. Okay,
Well, it
sorry.
feels like a red wedding. We're
Yeah,
not. You got
yeah, a Red
145%
Wedding is what
tariffs.
I meant. Our little Game of Thrones reference there. And I'm sure a lot of you guys get it. But wow, it's tough. When I keep listening to the news, Colin, CNBC specifically, it's all over the place. And they are now acting, all these big CEOs, like, oh, everybody knew this was coming. And what's wrong with you people that didn't prepare? But you know what he's not thinking about, Colin?
What?
He's not thinking he's thinking like everybody's a multi billion dollar company. We have been trying in our business, Paw.com, to find a manufacturer of a specific fabric. It's not crazy or weird. It's just a faux fur. You can see it on paw.com if you're interested. But it's every bit of that we have found, and we're being told that no one makes it outside of China. Now, we're small businesses, everybody, just so everybody is clear here. Like, it's not like we're sitting around not struggling with this business. It's an e commerce business. We are. And when you throw something like that into the mix, a wrench into the mix there, it wasn't something that we could turn on a dime. There's no one that manufactures this material we need outside of China. Okay, so I'm just like you mentioned, we're knee deep. I'm just like lamenting a little bit here. I'm venting a little bit here so you guys and ladies can understand that we're going through this too. We're going through it with you, and we want to hear what you're doing, strategies you're doing. And I think that's a good segue, Colin, into talking about some of the strategies we're doing. And I want to hear from people here in the room what you're doing. Would love to know. Colin.
Yeah, look, that's what we're talking about today, right? We're really trying to get into this concept of how do we deal with the things we can't control? And can we do anything? Can we do anything? And I'm here to make the case that when there's chaos, when there is things you cannot control, whether it's 145% tariffs or whether it's high interest rates or a pandemic, whatever it is, there are things you can do as an entrepreneur. Now, there's certain limitations, and then sometimes you just got to call it quits. But there are some actions you can take when you're in the middle of the storm right now. Paw.com is a very successful e-commerce company. and now we're being hit with 145% tariffs. So how does a company like paw.com survive? There are some techniques, there are some things we can do. But I know one thing, we can't just sit there and watch CNBC. We can't just sit there and watch the news and complain that this is what's happening and get emotionally stressed out about it. We have to accept the fact that we cannot control those things, but there are things we can do. And what I liked with what you did, Michelle, at paw.com is the thing that I think one of the first things that you did was share your problem with your suppliers and your customers. Okay, so at paw.com, you went out to your customer base and you emailed 500,000 people and you told them, look, we've got tariffs coming. It's challenging for us. And we're going to put this stuff on sale so we can raise additional money to buy new products with tariffs. And you can get the sale. And it was one of your best emails you'd ever come out with. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, Michelle, because I thought that was phenomenal. I thought that was a big breakthrough.
Yeah, you know how I am, a straight shooter, and maybe I am watching too much CNBC, Colin, but nonetheless, yeah, I believe authentically there's a fundamental shift that's going to have to happen in our business and all businesses, quite candidly, unless you're maybe digital and you don't do any physical production of products. So I felt it was like a good idea for us just to very plainly and authentically share that with our client base, our customers, because prices are going to have to go up. And we made a decision that we would let people buy still at a very good price, even did a promo now before we go and have to increase inventory. Of course, this is barring no deal being made. And that's even if we can get inventory in the next 6 months, year, whatever it is. So that's why we did it. And I actually did it in a just plain HTML text email, like a letter. I'm sure many of you have seen this. There's a lot of really cool companies that are ethical and do these kind of things too. And just we just gave them a very aggressive campaign because we do need the funds, knowing that we have inventory stuck in China. And now we're going to have to pay presumably a higher tariff. So there's so many things going on, as you call them, but that's one thing we did. If you guys sell that kind of product and you can honestly say that's the strategy you're taking, I highly recommend you let your customers know.
Yeah, and what I also see that you did was share your problem with your suppliers. Like you go back to the Chinese manufacturers and say, look, we're being hit with a big tariff. First of all, we need you to hold inventory. I know Pod.com's got a lot of inventory in transit. And so we need you to hold that inventory until we can resolve until we can resolve the situation. But also going forward, we know we're going to have higher tariffs and you're going to have to lower your prices. You can't always just raise your prices on consumers. We're in the e-commerce business. It's ruthless. It's cutthroat. Right, Michelle? You can't just increase your prices, but you get 20%
No, I
increase on your
mean,
tariff. You're gonna raise your price by 20%, then you won't sell as much and the advertising won't be as effective. And you just gonna it's just gonna draw it's gonna grind to a halt. So you've got to become innovative. You got to think about ways you can reduce costs, become more efficient, and share your problems with your customers and your suppliers.
yeah, and it's not easy. It's already difficult at the price point that we're at to sell things. And we're always doing aggressive sales to get more sales, of course. So, yeah, it's a slight price increase. It's not good. And I think most people probably feel like they're losing value other places in the economy. So I think people are not so easily spending this kind of money, let's just say, in general, for things that are not essential. But you want
Agreed.
me to roll into the next thing? And then I think we have someone on the stage here that I'd
Yeah,
love to hear from.
yeah.
Okay, cool. So the other thing that we're doing, and again, most of you probably know this, but I mention it because we're a small business and we're, we're still learning things, okay? Things that were not important before are now. So warehousing and where you land your inventory is critical. I'm not saying try to get around tariffs by saying it came from another country because I believe you'll get caught and it's probably just not a smart thing to do. But what you can do is you can move inventory into another country directly from China, okay? But you have to put it in the right warehouse. They have these trade free zones, TFZs, and they have these bonded warehouses. I'm still learning the particulars, the details about it, but that's a strategy we're looking at. You can land your inventory into one of those warehouses, and then you don't have to pay tariffs on the inbound until you move the not domain until you move the inventory into where you destined it to be. You're still paying a tariff from the origin country, but you're parking your inventory in a middle trade-free zone, a Switzerland of sorts. It's not Switzerland. They have them all over the world, so that you can defer. It's going to help you with capital. Let's all hope and pray that the tariffs go down. I don't know that they could go up anymore. There's a lot of reasons, and I think it mitigates some risk as well. But again, you have to still be prepared to pay the tariffs. One thing I'm understanding is you have to make sure you know how long the country and the warehouse will let you park inventory. There's a lot of really obviously important questions that you would ask when you were moving any kind of inventory into a warehouse. I think that I've talked a lot, Colin. Let's let the stage come up and tell us what they're thinking. And we have Go Winning. Wogo, you want to talk to us about tariffs and products? You're on mute. It's right on the bottom right of your screen.
Hey,
Oh,
hey,
there he is.
greetings. Greetings to
Greetings
the
to
room.
you.
How's everyone going? How's everyone doing this Friday with these tariffs? Have
Yes.
mercy.
So you tell
Terrible
us.
tariff.
Yeah.
Of course, I too have been hit with them. I work with a few brands, but one brand in particular. We make stuff stateside as well as China side, and some of our packaging comes from China, and a lot of our product does too. And so I used to live there, and I have some good relationships. So I too am looking to. I've started talking with my manufacturing contacts and whatnot, and so I'm actually going to be planning to go over there and within the next few weeks and really brainstorm about how we can. What are some things we can do, shipping wise, cost wise, design wise, and then also forecasting future. And I'm going to be bringing a couple of different people who want to also get up. Sometimes the best times to talk are like when you, that's a great advice that you gave, to talk to the manufacturers, because a lot of times on the news, they're just painted as China, one big conglomerate. But on the other side, there are also people who have businesses who don't want to lose them, who don't want to lay off employees, and they understand that their biggest customer base is in the US. And so a lot of them are saying, hey, Mike, come on, get over here. Let's start talking. Let's see what we could do. Let's try to like devise a way to roll through this storm together. So I think I'm with it, like talking. And also, sometimes I know a brand that they, during the pandemic, had a big sell through. And then what happened was they sold so much, and then shipping was truncated. So a lot of their things were coming late, and this brand hadn't developed the relationships over there. So they didn't know how to tell their customers in a way that conveyed trust and faith that, hey, look, things are a little bit slow because of this truncated, but hey, we're linked in with them. We're going to get it to you guys as soon as possible. So I think that's my play also, to talk to both suppliers and customers, but I'm going to talk to my suppliers, many of them face to face. And what I've seen is when you go that extra mile to talk face to face, from what I've experienced, they will also trust me. They want to get past this too. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And also, I might be exploring some countries on the side of China, because a lot of Chinese manufacturers are open or have opened facilities like in Vietnam and Thailand. However, in my experience, the most coordinated is China. Like the system is coordinated for production. So I land my plane with that.
Yeah, and I know in our case, it's Mike, right? You said
Yes,
in
yes.
our yeah, in our case, we at paw.com, we've got really it's textiles. We do waterproof blankets, car seats, beds, dog beds, and that kind of stuff. And it's really tricky, to try to find a manufacturer who does textiles in the United States, and I don't even know if it exists anymore. 90%. Here's a
Very
fact:
hard.
90% of all textiles come from China. So it
Yeah,
doesn't
and
matter what
you
you
know what
raise the
I've been,
price to.
yeah, and I think I feel like I'm on a soapbox today, Colin. One thing I'm gonna tell you is there are in the US, but they tend to be like all cotton. They're all kind of organic, natural, because I think we're failing to forget, a lot of us, not you in the room, but the others, that for the last whatever, like 40 years, there's been a huge movement in this country to be eco-friendly. Okay, we're not producing plastics typically, we're not doing synthetic materials here. Those were all very conscientious just choices for what I personally believe, and I think many people do, were very good reasons. So it's not as easy as just like dumping all this kind of toxic byproducts into your environment or someone else's. Go ahead.
Also, our recycling. So, with the plastics, when we do our recycling, we bundle our stuff up and we ship it overseas. I worked for a short amount of time for a program called Recycla, like Recycle LA, and they consolidated a lot of the haulers, and then they gently forced the businesses and more than 5 unit multi buildings to start recycling, and then the play was to ship it over to China. And I know China enacted something where they said, okay, we're not going to take a lot of it because it's too dirty. But yeah, all of that recycling is produced into little pellets, and that's the stuff that's used. Yeah,
Microplastics, yeah.
yeah, those are things that they're used to make more plastic. And like I said, the country is coordinated for production. Our country is not coordinated like that for production. We, from the rooter to the tutor, we don't do it. So it's tough.
Yeah, it is. It is tough, and I think that this 145% tariff has been really hard on paw.com, and it's been hard on every e-commerce company, every company that imports goods, and there's tariffs on every country right now in the world. It's been total chaos. It's been a bit of a disaster, but at the same time, there's hope. There's hope that real change can happen because before these actions were implemented, and I don't want this to be a political show because we're just trying to talk about what we can do as startups to figure out how to survive in this environment. But the reality is, there were a lot of Chinese companies dumping products into the United States. They had an $850 exemption. They could ship it directly, the copycats, without paying any tariffs. And we've been paying tariffs all along. Just didn't seem like a level playing field. And I think right now,
Yeah, that's
the
horrible.
stage is being set to create a level playing field. And that's the hope I have, Mike. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that's my hope.
I'm with you. I feel that like there's not really a concept, and I lived there, and I lived there, I learned Chinese, and I lived there like starting 2007. And so I was there. There's not the concept of intellectual property is one that's not really like, to give an example, I'm teaching in the university, okay? I had to teach to make money so I could pay for my Chinese classes. And the concept of like plagiary didn't really, I would explain, okay, you guys can't plagiarize, you guys can't copy. And they didn't understand what that meant, even at the staff. And the reason why is because, and it's a really deep situation because a lot of them in the engineering department, one of my friends was there, he's an English teacher, and he's watching a class, and the teacher said, okay, this student, they all had to do a circuit board. Okay, this guy did the best. He did the best in the class. Everyone needs to copy him and make theirs after his. That's how it was over there. I was in Guilin Electronic University. And then I remember I had to help them not copy. I had to help them say, hey, look, I need you to write a thesis statement of what you're going to speak about in your paper. You can't write a how-to. I need you to, because they would just go on the internet and just pull up a how-to do. No, you need to write what you think, and then have some supports of why you think that. And that was one of the hardest concepts for the students to take because What do you mean what I think? I'm telling you what I experienced. And so I like that there had been like, there are previously like some mechanisms to slow down that kind of stuff, but in their worldview, it doesn't really exist. And you could, and when I was there, you could not kick out a student for plagiarism. So
Yeah, it is a different way of thinking, right? It's a totally different way of thinking, and we do even have to be careful how we talk on the show because of AI and the way it can grab information. That's another thing. A little bit of we've gone there. I went there 14 times to China. I know Michelle's gone there a lot. We went for multiple companies. We went for Dot Club, and then we went also to see manufacturers for paw.com. And I think the one thing you can agree with, Mike, is that the Chinese people are great people, and we really felt when we went there that they cared about us, and they were just good people. So we're not talking about the Chinese people. We're talking about policies that are set in place by governments that make it very hard for startups like ours to be able to survive. And our startups collateral damage. Is that what happens when the big companies or the big governments make their decisions? And in COVID, they decided to shut people down, and your business was shut down. And I know there were some subsidies offered to keep some businesses open, and some didn't make it, some closed. And then we had the high inflation, and then high interest rates, and a war in Ukraine, and we got a hurricane, and then you've got these high tariffs. And how do you deal with the situation? If you're in the audience, feel free to join us on stage. We love having Joe on stage as well. Joe, thank you for coming on. What are your thoughts about this topic? We're doing an open mic Friday, so give us your thoughts on this topic. How do you control the uncontrollable?
Notice on our quotes, notice your company will be responsible for all tariffs and or brokerage fees. You're getting quoted a cost, and because we don't know what the tariff fee will actually end up being, you're just going to get tacked on the tariff fees on the end. And then what's sucky, there's a difference between what the company that's purchasing is charged for a tariff versus what the charge the end customer is going to get. Because in some ways it's intellectual property to know what your margins are. And if you end up charging only the incremental tariff fee, then that increment ends up undoing what your margins are being made. And so you're just going to get charged the entire tariff on your list price.
Yeah, so it's like again, it's uncontrollable, right? It's
It's
like you can't control it
it's not
because
only the tariff rate, it's double the tariff rate, is my point.
oh, I see. It's worse than what you're saying. Right?
I think you're saying, if I understood you, is the customer ends up paying again too.
Not again, they pay twice what the tariff rate is.
Okay. So when you say, anyways, I don't want to go into the,
Let's go
yeah.
with a nice simple.
Uh,
I
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
buying a product from China for $100. All right.
Okay.
Uh, What did we mention the tariff rate is?
Let's
Right now, it's
say,
145.
yeah,
Okay, 145. So now we pay $245 for that product to purchase
right.
it, right?
Plus, yeah,
Yeah. Guess what? I'm making 50% margin on it. So now you're not charged 145, you're charged almost 500.
as a consumer.
As a consumer, you're
Yeah,
now
yeah,
charged
right. Yeah,
500
it's
for
a
the
Oh, but if
product.
the if the world worked that
yeah,
way,
you
but
should, yeah, go
it
ahead.
doesn't work that way. The consumer's not going to pay,
Then the
And
consumer
we
doesn't pay.
might dump, and we have
and
to
then we go
dump,
bankrupt.
That's why you have other products.
That's
and
why
we
we're having the
lose.
show. Exactly. I know we're going around in circles. It's funny, but it really is the uncontrollable, and it's really is a dangerous time for entrepreneurs in this world. Make this case. I always make the case that this country, this world is run by billionaires and big corporations, and the thing that they fear the most are startups. It's a startup like an OpenAI that can come up there and threaten Google's dominance in search. It's a startup that comes out with an innovative product that threatens these big brands. And that's what I truly believe. That's what they fear the most. And so is policy being designed to are startups collateral damage when it comes to the tariff war? Are we collateral damage in the COVID? Are we collateral damage with interest rates? Not one startup got paid anything when it came to the CHIPS Act. The trillions of dollars went to the big corporations. They didn't go to the startups.
I received
And I
mine from
feel
the
like,
CHIPS Act.
yeah, there you go. So I think that we're in that mode, and as entrepreneurs, we got to figure out how to survive and how do we come up with the formulas. And I think we came up with a few good ideas here. One being share with your customer, another being share with your supplier, another being getting bonded warehouses for this particular issue, another diverting to other countries. There are strategies you can try to use to survive in these dark winters, as I'll call them. And but I appreciate that. Joe, any other thoughts on this one before we
Yeah.
jump down to the next gentleman?
I thought with the
All right,
stock
go
market
for it.
on this.
Since we're
Here's the
running that
doomsday
doomsday
thought.
show, we might as well go for it.
But let's talk about Kodak and innovation and why didn't Kodak end up going and making a digital camera? Is because the investing class chose to invest into new companies and make their 10x in startups rather than keeping the old institutions innovating. So when we go to companies that are manufacturing in China, I think that the investing class would rather retool and make money off of the new products that are sold inside of the United States, off of new manufacturing lines, than innovate with the existing with new manufacturing lines. And so then that also leaves that only the accredited investors are able to capitalize on this growth of the economy, and that the general working class that buys into stocks will not be part of it.
Yeah, I actually talked a lot about in the book Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat about my time working for a Fortune 500 company at the very top and how I learned that fundamentally larger companies they tend to avoid risk, and the people who bubble up to the top of these organizations are also risk averse and very political in nature. I'll throw that out there. And what ends up happening, you have a lot of yes people around a CEO and not a lot of innovation occurring, because the ones who take innovation, the ones who stick their necks out there, even pod.com, we don't succeed at every product we launch. In fact, I think the majority of products we launch actually fail, but the 3 or 4 out of 10 or whatever it is that succeed, we hit big with those products, but we are willing to accept failure. We're willing to accept mistakes. And in big corporations, it's a much tougher environment to make a mistake and come back from. And there's a lot of people like to they like to hang you in those types of environments. And what actually happens is a lot of the entrepreneurs get frustrated and they leave those environments and they go start their own companies. They launch a new product, they build the product up, they scale it, and then they exit it to a big company and make a nice payday. And probably the smarter companies are the ones that are able to buy those innovative products, but also bring on innovation and continue to build that out within their organizations. But you're right, time and time again, we've seen new startups innovate and create much better than larger companies with much larger budgets. And that's what I call enter the entrepreneur. Because of the way the system works, there is that opportunity for an entrepreneur to thrive in an environment like we have today. All right, we'll jump down to you. We're going to stay away from politics on this one, but Project 2080. We'll give you the floor here for a minute, but we're not going to get political. We love the pandas.
Now, we can't figure out a way to make our own pandas. We got male and female pandas. Why can't we figure out a way to have our own pandas? Why are we paying China $1 million a year? Those pandas live better than people. They have the best medical care. They fly on jets all over the place. Makes no sense to me. I'll give you one more example, then I'll turn it over to someone else. This is a real world example that this is something that I can can attest to personally. So my business, I'll just call them testers. I use them to diagnose for one of these testers. That one of the ones that I use, one of the more high-end testers that I use, $10,000 round numbers from a large supplier. That supplier shipped the stuff to China, all the technology. China knocked it off, the same damn thing, exactly the same. 2,500. Listen, this is going to be the last opportunity that we're going to have to get this right. If we don't get it right this time, it's going to be too late. So we just need to suck it up, stop belly aching, and let's do what our forefathers and foremothers did. Let's get this thing done. It's just going to be a little pain now, but and I'll turn the stage over to someone else.
No, I think we can all agree that in the end, if what's happening now, the pain that we're experiencing with these tariffs, if that can lead to a more equal playing field for entrepreneurs in the United States and even in Canada and elsewhere too, where we can all compete on an equal basis. It really is difficult being an entrepreneur, running a business when you've got to hire people and follow certain environmental standards and minimum wage laws and no child labor. And I'm not in support of any of that, of child labor and or underpaying employees or any of that. But you also have healthcare fees and other costs, and you need to be competitive. But if someone in a foreign country doesn't have those rules and they don't have the same environmental standards, it's not fair trade. It's not free trade. It's imbalanced trade. And then what we've seen over the last 30, 40 years is a lot of businesses, a lot of manufacturing, a lot of companies in the Western world, Europe, in the United States, Canada have gone under, and they've been replaced by other companies in other countries and other entrepreneurs. Now, that's a macroeconomic view of everything. And I think the hope is right now with what we're going through, what paw.com and other companies, that these tariffs do resolve the bigger issue of this fair trade. And I think we're holding on. We're gonna do whatever we can. Like I talked about, share with suppliers, share with customers. There's one more I want to talk about, which is actually make noise. Bring your company into the conversation. I have a small story I'll share with you. When back in 1997, we were running an ISP in Canada and they had cut our phone lines, the utility company, by accident. They were doing some water piping or something, and hundreds of thousands of people lost internet in Toronto, and we were pretty much out of business. And this was our entire life at the time. And we all gathered in the boardroom with the executive, and I said, "Okay, what are we going to do, guys?" And we made a quick decision to put out a press release to say that the utility company had canceled all of our phone lines, and we put that out there, and I could not believe what happened. We had every station, news station, radio, TV, talking about how hundreds of thousands of people were cut off the internet because of this lines that were cut. And the telecom had people there for 36 hours straight reattaching each phone line to connect us. But the fact is, Internet Direct became a household name and went public and became the largest independent ISP in Canada at the time. And here was a chaos. Here was a situation where we were out of business through a factor we could not control. But we used public relations, PR, to try to turn that around. And I was thinking about that the other day, Michelle, reading the Wall Street Journal, reading about all the stories of all the companies who are facing the challenges of these tariffs. In fact, a lot of them were Shark Tank companies, dozens and dozens of Shark Tank companies, all going bankrupt because of these high tariffs. And there's nothing wrong with getting your name put into the mix when it comes to this kind of stuff to support your business. So that's micro. So we went from the macro to the micro there. And we have Jason on stage as well. We'll jump over to you, Jason. We're doing an open mic tariff turmoil, our startups collateral damage. And we'd like to hear from you, Jason, what your thoughts are on this topic. So if you're there, Jason, we'll jump to you. There we go.
Tonight. think there's an interesting, actually, series of articles that Francis Fukuyama has put together about how regulations in this country obstruct domestic innovation. And one like particular example I've run into periodically, I'm on a call with people who are working on drones, and the radio regulations in the United States are very stringent and very complex. So it's actually very hard to innovate on drone manufacturing in the United States. It's very hard to do drone testing. It's very hard to develop new, more robust protocol for drones that are used in combat, for example, because
Doesn't China own that space with DJS and they own it?
China has much more relaxed radio regulations. So it's much easier to put together drones. Yes, they do own it. And in part, it has to do with this.
DJI, it's
Yeah, I
called.
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in part, it has to do with this particular feature of that space, which is that radio development is a big part of making your drones work. In the United States, our hands are tied by a wide variety of regulations that don't exist in China. And one other clue you can see about this is you get, if a lot of radios in the US, people buy the radios from China. And the radios that come from China are actually full of features you are not allowed to use. It would be against the law for you to use them in America. Power on certain bands, encryption on certain frequencies, and all this kind of stuff. And because of this wide array of regulations that we have in this country. And it seems like in the past 70 odd years, we have implemented a lot of regulations that obstruct innovation. And this is not a matter of tariffs or no tariffs. It's not even a matter of environment or no environment or labor standards or whatever else. It's a lot of details, and each individual detail doesn't really matter so much, but the aggregate weight of the details is very costly.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying
Question
there.
for
So it's regulation, different regulations in different countries make it very hard for the entrepreneurs to compete. I also think about self-driving vehicles and the rules that are associated with that in the United States. There is a balance, right? Because if you go too far and you stop protecting the rights of individuals and whatnot, and people start dying because you're too, you don't have enough regulations in place because of the self-driving and people or whatever, versus another society where they might be more embrace it and they accept it. I remember walking around in China, how it's a whole different concept of, Mike, you probably remember this, but walking in Florida or Canada or whatever, it's people tend to stop for you, and the pedestrian tends to have the priority. Whereas when I've been in Beijing and elsewhere, it's like the car has the priority, and if you get in the way, it's self responsibility. You got to survive. So maybe their culture can handle self driving a little better. I'm not really certain, but definitely regulation does play a role. I think you're right about that in the different countries, and gives advantage of some entrepreneurs over other entrepreneurs as well. All right, we have Richard on the stage. We'll come back to you, Joe. I see you flash your mic, so we'll go Richard and then back up to you, Joe. But Richard, we've got you on stage, and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Colin. It's a great topic. So
Definitely
often in
touching a nerve, right?
definitely 100. So when we're business owners, we're too close to the trees to see the forest, right? We're in the trenches every day, putting out fires, working with customers, suppliers, employees, things of that nature. So when I work with clients, I look at it like the quote unquote big picture. And a lot of times, what you have to do is you have to make a huge shift in the business model. So the business model is how you create, you deliver, and you capture value to your ideal clients. Keywords ideal clients. And your ideal clients are the ones that you create the most value for them, not who can pay you the most money. So for an example like this, you have to look at if you're creating a product and you're importing it someplace, tariffs are the battle. Is there a service that you can do, ideally subscription-based service, for your ideal clients? So everybody's heard of the 80-20 rule. How about if you go a subset deeper and you do the 80-20 of the 80-20, which 4% of your customers will be 64% of your business. And these, again, are rules of thumb. So check those numbers. So go to 4% of your customers that pay you the most money, and ask them, what besides these products, whatever that may be, what besides these products are a service that you would pay for? What's in their ecosystem? For example, and again, I know just a little bit about paw.com. I don't know enough about it, but one possibility could be, think of everybody in that ecosystem, excuse me, like all the little bitty, like dog groomers, vets, trainers, dog photography. You can just go down the list, kennels, things of that nature. What would they pay for that would be a service that could be subscription based? So that's just some of my thoughts and ideas. Change
I
it.
love that. I
Yeah.
love the idea of thinking for a product company, how do you create a subscription? If you're a subscription company, how do you also sell products? We've lived in the subscription world, Michelle and I, with our prior companies, and we've failed to crack that with paw.com right now. It's sort of the Wayfair of pet products, pet rugs and blankets and car seats and things like that. But we think it's probably something that we could do, and it's definitely an area. And I like what you say about the 4%. Richard, I feel like we should do a show together here on this because we're talking about tariff turmoil here, and you got some really good thoughts there around that. So if you do reach out to Mimi, she's here on stage. You can text her or send an email to hello@startup.club. And by the way, we've now opened startup.club to contributing authors. And the SEO that the website gets is very good. You can almost, I've done about 6 articles now on Startup Club in the last 2 months, 3 months, and almost every one made the front page of Google on SEO for some term or another. So it's still relatively small traffic, but we get some very good SEO, especially around the startup community. And we're looking for contributors there. We're also looking for speakers to come on and talk about their expertise. And Richard, I know you've been on a few times and would really like to do a show with you and really get into deep about that concept that you brought up as well.
Sure, I'd be glad to do a show, Colin. Yeah, just have Mimi reach out to me. My cell phone, email, everything's in my bio. I'd be glad to have a show and talk and add value to entrepreneurs. It's a battle. You need an expert on your side that can walk you through those steps of that journey.
Yeah, so this show is actually a podcast and a YouTube video as well. And so we syndicate it after the live show. You can also get it on replay on Clubhouse. It's obviously a lot more fun when you're in person. You jump on stage, we talk about it. The community talks about a particular issue like the tariffs and stuff. But you can actually listen to it in any podcast channel. It's called Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat: Serial Entrepreneur Secrets Revealed, which is exactly what the name of the book, the best-selling book. So it's the same topic, the same title, sorry, and we're looking for more people to contribute to this community and do shows on Clubhouse and you can do ad hoc shows. We're looking for leaders. We'd love for more and more people to get actively involved on Startup Club. I know Clubhouse has gone through hell, and there's an example of things you cannot control. We're the largest club on Clubhouse, and we have no ability of communicating or working directly with our users in the platform. And it's very difficult to run Startup Club on Clubhouse, to be quite frank, as the way they've changed the app and people have disappeared. It's just not been as engaging as other platforms, but we've stuck with it. And we've got ways we amplify, we film. I do a lot of filming when we talk, and it goes into TikTok videos. And got a lot of things going here at Startup Club. But the reality is, it's about community. It's about people like yourself, Mike and Richard, and I know Shadow's down there as well, and all of you coming on stage and sharing with us what your thoughts are on any particular topic. Every Friday, 2 o'clock Eastern, we do this show. And we also put out a newsletter. We do it once a month, and it is a freaking masterclass of startups concepts. Everything from the time to sell index, which is an empirical measurement that we've now included in the newsletter, to stories from myself, stories from others who and they're fairly valuable lessons. We share the top TikTok videos, the top shows, the top authors who we've worked with that month, and it continues to grow. Startup Club continues to be an ecosystem for those who really want to connect and help their career, because believe it or not, entrepreneurship is not a job. It is a trade like any other trade. It's not just one company. It's about learning how to start many companies, scale them, exit them, and then repeat that over and over again. That's what Startup Club's all about. So we're looking for more contributors. Thank you for listening to that. If you're in the audience, we've got a few minutes left here. If anybody on stage wants to add some additional thoughts to this tariff turmoil that we're going through, this situation where startups have to find a way to survive, we'd love to hear from you. Mike, I see you're flashing your mic, so you're up next.
Yeah. So one of my questions is, I believe there is a is there a like a allocation of time before tariffs actually hit? I know a few weeks ago I
It
haven't been
was
paying
like
attention
a
to the.
week. It was something like a week. You know how Trump works. It's not
I thought there was like a 90-day thing.
okay. There's 90 days for some exemptions for Canada, and but not China. Right now, we have merchandise that's caught in transit, so we can't ship it, and it's manufactured. It's stuck, and we just don't. We don't know what to do. We basically said hold it to the supplier. It happened pretty quickly. They didn't give 90 days for China, and then I knew that people they talked about it was coming. I don't think anyone expected 134, 145% tariff. I don't know.
There and so there's the concept also of face, which in China is very important. That
Stay
concept,
face, yeah.
and so a lot of things can be mitigated by the way you could show power without. There's different ways to show power, and so one of the things that I saw over there was the leaning into that, utilizing that concept of face for one's benefit. And so I think a few days ago, was there a back? There was. I haven't been able to research. I've been on the road driving. I drove up from Miami to Atlanta, and so I haven't really been able to research stuff. But I saw something about there might be a pause on something. I'm not sure. Have you guys seen that,
Like
or
there's optimism. There's optimism. Like you can't just. I mean, there's ships at sea right now that can't come in.
It's changing every day,
Yeah.
is the reality. So
Last I read about the Wall Street Journal yesterday or this morning was that they're looking at 100% tariff on strategic goods that are of strategic nature to the U.S. and a 35% tariff on those goods that are not. I've heard lots of different formulas, but the reality is we're going to face higher tariffs, and we're going to have to learn how to deal with that. And we're going to have to become innovative. We're going to try to onshore as much as we can, but we got to be realistic when it comes to textiles. It's not that easy to do onshore.
and I'm not familiar with your business, but partial goods, like partially is. Are you
I
guys?
know what you're
Yeah.
saying. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, again, it's we tend to have a lot of products that only come out of China, but definitely we're looking at options. I have ideas that we will use different sourcing options. And I've already said to my team, for example, I want these to be recycled products. Okay, so I'm just trying to put the good side of this is with the new sourcing that we do, we will, I think, go for other countries, obviously, to the extent we can. But also, I want to up our value. Like I do want us to be, for example, eco-friendly. So there is some good things, hopefully, that will come out of this, and hopefully our customers will also appreciate it. That's the hard one.
One play that I think is very important, and I think especially to be competitive, as the project was saying, competitive as far as production. I think that to do that, it would be very beneficial for us. For many, every time I take someone over there, they become a lot more productive stateside because they see what is happening as far as speed. And in the industry that I'm in, it's more luxury goods and accessories and packaging. There, it's not done. The materials aren't cheap, and the labor isn't cheap, but it's just done with speed and with quality and with better tools. And so, being able to see that will, I think, increase our productivity. I was working with a company. They were a testing company. They were a testing platform, and actually one of the best during COVID. They actually won a very big grant. They were one of those companies, and they tried to bring production over here, but there wasn't the know-how to get it done, and because of that, they had a great testing platform, had the money, had the purchase orders, and couldn't get it done because there is not the production culture or know how to get that kind of thing done. I think that we can't. And China right now is actually they're preparing to do a lot of their production in Africa in the next few years because their working age is too old. And my Chinese contacts are saying, "Hey, Mike, we're going to go to Africa. I'm just letting you know." So I think we can become productive in the States, but it's going to take a very big investment into the small business and innovators to make that happen. I
Yeah.
like.
You've had a tremendous amount of insight, and I can tell that you actually are in there doing it. It's resonating. So I think we're about at the end of the hour. I don't know about you, Colin, but I'm feeling a little, what would be the word?
Stressed?
Not stressed. I don't want to say stressed, conflicted, I think.
Conflicted.
Bipolar, good and the bad. And you understand just the overall impacts. Like it's a big piece of a mess, right? To unravel. I think we could talk about this probably for hours and hours more. I don't know. What do you think about doing another session soon?
We could. We might do that. We might pick that one up. But we didn't want it to be just about specifically the tariffs. We wanted it to be about how do you, as an entrepreneur, survive? How do you get through the tough times when things beyond your control impact you? And I think we got some formulas there. What I'd like to do is I'm going to work on an article and appreciate all of those who definitely contributed to today's show. And I'm going to definitely go work on an article for Startup Club. I also write for Forbes, and I'm very close to signing a deal with another magazine to be a contributing author, a very well-known one. These are the type of topics that I like to post on these types of websites. I do think there are things you can do, and instead of nothing, right? It can seem out of your control, but there are things you can do, and the alternative is just go home and do nothing and curl up into a ball. And trust me, I feel like doing that these days a lot more than often. But the reality is, there are things you can do, and we've touched upon those today. All right, you've been listening to Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat, Serial Entrepreneur Secrets Revealed. We will be back next week. Mimi, do we have a guest speaker next week? I know I'm putting you on the spot, Mimi, there. Just flash your mic if.
No, we don't. Sorry, I was just checking.
All right,
No
so
one's planned
we
yet.
can do another open mic, and I think the open mic sessions are the best. And don't get me wrong, we love our authors, we love our billionaires when they come on here, even if I insult billionaires from time to time. But we love them, and we enjoy talking to them, and we learn a lot of lessons from them, and they help decode what it takes to make a startup successful. But having the community and having you all come on and share today, we really appreciate that. So we'll do another open mic next Friday, 2 o'clock Eastern on Startup Club. And if you get a chance, go to startup.club and sign up to that email list. I'm telling you, it's free. It's absolutely free. It'll be the best thing you ever did to help you as an entrepreneur, to help you learn the art of the trade. See you all next week. Bye.